Hey, what's up? Welcome to the Vineyard Collective podcast. My name is Samuel. I'm one of your hosts. And today I've got an amazing friend, a little bit of a mentor lately, Tom Campion. Welcome to the podcast, man.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Tom, tell us a little bit about you. You're a psychologist. Your father by night is what you said earlier. Psychologist by day, father by night. But tell us a little bit about you.
I'm a native to Central Illinois. Grew up here. Actually, my kids are third generation of the Vineyard Church here,
which is amazing.
Yeah, which is cool for them.
That's goals for me.
Yeah, so it's really awesome. Never thought that.
Yeah.
Never really planned that. It's just kind of how it's worked out. And it's been wonderful.
Yeah.
To be able to do that. I went away to the East Coast for school. But when my wife Sherry and I came back in 2000, we were trying a lot of different churches, but Vineyard was the home, and we just looked at each other and said, "Let's do it."
Yeah.
And it's been our home since. And all of our kids come up through that, kids baptized in that. So it's been really nice to be the local guy, local in the church. Of course I met my wife out east, and she goes, "You got a Southern accent." I said, "What are you talking about?" And I'll do some work around the country. Say, "Yeah, you sound like you had a Southern accent." And I said, "What do you mean by that?" She goes, "Well, you have friends named Ben and Ken." I said, "Yeah, Ben. You mean Ben and Ken?"
Ben and Ken.
Yeah, Ben and Ken. And so people say it sounds really refined, like a Southern accent. No, it's Illinois hick. It's all Central Illinois. It's from the cornfields. There's nothing.
We grew up in the cornfields. Is what we sound like.
That's right. So it is nothing refined about it. It's just Central Illinois.
Yeah.
So it's been nice being able to be a part of the community, be part of Central Illinois here, help out whenever way I can. And so anytime I sit down and talk like this, I'm excited about it. So
yeah,
I appreciate
absolutely.
it.
And you're one that I've noticed likes to have fun. I mean, we just had coffee like a week or so ago, and we were laughing a lot.
Yes.
So what are some funny podcast appropriate stories of either kids or family trips or anything like that you're willing to tell that your kids won't get mad about, or your family?
It was probably more of my humor style. I was a camp counselor, and I found that the 11 and 12-year-old kid was like the best for me. And I finally realized that's my humor style. It doesn't go much more than early junior high.
So that's where you're thriving. As your kids turn 11 and 12,
through that, I can get
coolest.
them rolling. They're laughing. Like I have my youngest Silas right now. He's 11, and we just have a great time. He laughs all my jokes. He just thinks it's the funniest. And as they get older, they start rolling their eyes.
Yeah.
And so I realized.
So Costin's probably at this level, who's one of the oldest. You've got Holt as well. But they're probably like, "Oh gosh, Dad."
Sometimes they'll jump in. So I find that my humor style is becoming more of that silly young style. It just kind of flows. And so I really like Jim Carrey humor stuff. It's just, we have a lot of fun with it.
I love it. I think that though, I think you're modeling to your kids though, as an adult, it's okay to have fun. So I think there's this idea, as youth, that the older you get, the more serious or mature you become. But I think you're keeping it childlike.
Yes.
We can still have fun, and I think that's huge. So one of the things that I've noticed, Tom, with this pandemic going on, political election, is Biden president? Is he not? Is Trump president? Is he not? Kind of a thing. One of the things that I've heard a lot of people say is anxiety and depression are ramping up for them. And I'm finding it to become a normal for high schoolers and for middle schoolers. It's almost like if you're not, you're weird. Can you speak into that? Someone who is a psychologist, someone who's dealt with people who have mental health issues, or you're helping them walk through stuff. What are some things that you feel are happening in today's society? But you also are very prophetic as well. So maybe come at it from the practical side and then also the prophetic side of speaking into mental health in the current climate that we're in.
Well, it's something, especially for kids, reaching their level.
Yeah.
Especially the politics you're talking about. It's reaching their level. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's been like that in the past, but I think it's way more now.
Yeah.
A lot more conversations around the house, just with children from even junior high, middle school to high school, very interested in what's going on politically.
Yeah.
It's drawn into that. It's also drawn in the hype, the anxiety. It's kind of and this has been a little bit of the hard side. It's been kind of a do or die on both sides. And so there's just kind of this pitch that comes out of that, you know, and the reality of, hey, life goes on. Life goes on.
Right.
Okay, life goes on after.
Yeah. No, I think it's
but it
huge.
turns into this do or die kind of make it happen, or don't make it happen, or
like right now, I'm done.
That's right. Hurry, make it. The dial's at 10.
Yeah.
And if there's a weak link in your emotional chain in some capacity, this is going to find it. You'll find it. That kind of angst, that kind of intensity, it brings out the worry, it can bring out the fear on top of everything else we're dealing with.
Yeah.
And so just like with adults, kids are experiencing very similar stuff.
Yeah. And from what I see, like just as youth, is like, for some reason, it's like you have like anxiety and shame, or depression, but you also have shame attached to it. Like one of the things that we've been dealing with is a lot of students feel shame that like their relationship with the Lord isn't as good as it should be, which, okay. But like speaking to that, like with shame when it comes to students, like what's some things that like they can do mentally or prepare themselves for, like, so they don't live a life of shame of like, I'm not doing good enough kind of a thing, or then all of a sudden depression, like I'm worse, I'm a horrible human. What are some things that you can say practically are just beneficial to do for all of us in this season?
It's a walking into this growing and developing and managing life at a new level. It's kind of like you don't know what you don't know. And so as you come in through adolescence, like, Mom, Dad, you're out of touch. Mom, Dad, you don't know what's going on.
You're not a vibe anymore.
That's right. You don't know what's happening right now. And so there's this reality that happens. Going through that. And so there's this newness that occurs. There's this new experiences that occur. How do I handle those? What do I do with that? Where do I get the information? Who do I try? Do I have my peers? Do I go to my out-of-touch parents? Do I have a youth pastor? What do I do to start collecting information? And I think staying in a position of trying to learn and know instead of I got it.
That's huge.
It's really tough.
Because like when you think you've got something, everyone else's opinion or perspective doesn't matter. It's like all of a sudden it's become invalid. So I think one of the things that I struggle with is always listening to outside perspectives. Like it's sometimes like, you don't know because you're not close. Like you use it like, you're not close, so you can't see. But when it comes to students, I think it's so easy to just turn to our phones as our perspective. What is that doing to us the more often that we turn to our phones and to the snapshots on Instagram of people's lives? What is that creating in us that maybe shouldn't be created?
Well, it's the search for answers. People ask me all the time, what should we do? What's the to do in this?
What's the 3-step model?
What's the 3-step model? I'm a perspective guy. I'm a guy who really understands, say, what's the big picture? It's the elevated advantage point. How do you get? It's like doing a corn maze. They have these little stands. So you
they're all making sure you don't get lost.
That's right. You go up the stand. Why do you go up the stand? So you can look around and see. Now you go back down and you re-engage. Well, we got to kind of teach, I think, kids to do that at times.
That's so good.
And we have to teach ourselves to do that sometimes. Say, hey, let's pause. Let's find the ladder. Let's climb up. Let's look around. What's going on here? What's the big picture? Now let's re-engage. And that could be our relationship with God. It could be our relationship with ourselves, relationship with school, relationship with politics. It could be a number of things. If we miss that big picture perspective, man, we're stumbling on the details. Totally.
And I think that leads into kind of the meat of the podcast, which is, I'm going to call it parenting in the pandemic, which none of us have done this, But what you just said about getting that elevated perspective, and then getting back into the corn maze, I think parents need to realize it's okay to like get the elevated perspective. So parenting in a pandemic has been tough for a lot of parents. I've heard from parents and from youth and students and kids like, my parents are just not in the house. Like they're home, but they're checked out. Or parents are like, I get home, my kid is running crazy through the house and it's worse than ever. So parenting in a pandemic, I feel like I can sit back and look at your kids and go, wow, like Lainey's awesome. Grayson's awesome. Like Lainey still won't let me pay her for babysitting. She's like, absolutely not. I'm like, oh my gosh. But I see the model that you're creating of like, we're going to have conversations about things, especially the hard stuff. And so what are some things that like parents are going through that you think and that maybe you've got perspective on with their kids and parenting in the middle of a pandemic?
Well, that's some perspectives that I think are really helpful, and this I've had to remind myself this and say, here's the thing: your children will live longer outside your house than in your house.
Wow.
I mean, that's just a reality. It's supposed to work that way.
That's good, right? That's good. Rich over there like, okay, then.
But here's the thing: if I miss that perspective, then I'm going to miss out on the value of the time together. I'm going to miss out on that. If I realize, here's the thing: they're not going to be around.
Right.
in here,
Yeah.
under this roof where I know they're at.
Right.
I know they're sleeping.
Yeah.
I know they're where
they're
eating.
safe.
I know they're safe.
Yeah.
They're going to be out doing life.
Yeah.
Way more longer
Yeah.
than here. And so we look at that differently. So as parents,
Yeah.
we'll start. We're going to be more interested in our time together. More interested in the conversations. More interested in what's happening in that. If I just start to work from that. Work from that perspective. I think also too, sometimes as adults, we get sucked into the details. And we get sucked into...
Tom, you're preaching right now.
We get sucked into the nuances, the social media stuff, and it draws us out of the big picture perspective. Like I was saying earlier, life continues to move forward. Life continues to go on. And that's a big picture perspective to help kind of take that dial from 10 and kind of move it down a little bit to realize, absolutely, we'll still keep going, and that's still very helpful. But even with parenting with the kids right now, about we were just talking earlier about the kids and athletics being pushed on and moved on, and that's a lot of loss.
I think people don't think it is a big loss. Like it's sports, you'll get next season, but like we're just talking like seniors don't have next season. Some baseball, 2 seasons already gone. So what are some of the things that like you're pushing into that like athletics is a huge thing for students, like especially with parents who maybe have students in athletic programs or a band or something. What's some ways that they can communicate and connect with their kids during this moment?
Well, there's 2 experiences happening. One experience is the parents' understanding of the loss. Like for me, I really understand the loss of missing maybe a football season. Because I went through it. I could only imagine not having my senior year of football. I could only imagine because I went through it. But for them, they don't know. They know there's a loss.
The world is ending
They
right
know
now.
there's a difference. They know something's going on, but not the level that maybe parents. So parents' perspective of loss on the child, got to be very careful. And to really walk with the child through what are you experiencing. Not necessarily, man, I feel sorry for you.
Right.
I remember those days. No, what are you experiencing? So I can walk alongside with what you're dealing with. Because it isn't new. Nobody's got a plan for this. They always got a plan on how to handle this or how to walk through that. We're dealing with a lot of what I call first world grief through this.
Press into that. I want to hear more about that.
Well, it's just loss. There's just loss everywhere. Loss of, you name it. There's things have changed and shifted because of loss through all this time, which is really hard. It's really tiring. Having conversations already today about COVID fatigue. It's just this idea of what this grind has been doing on another decision that needs to be made, another pivot that needs to be made. What are we doing? There's another loss that we're experiencing, another change that's shifting, and people are just getting really tired. Tired in those moments. And working from a perspective of how do we do this together and try to be in there with the kids and what they're dealing with, because as adults we're dealing with it too.
One of the things that you said when we were having coffee, that I had a moment with Cadence where Cadence was just, I don't know what was going on. Someone asked me like, so what happened to him? Like, she's 4. I don't know what to tell you. She's acting crazy and wild. And she was like trying to express to me her frustrations. And in the back of my head, I heard you say from our coffee, like, well, if we keep wishful thinking that they just get older, eventually they're not in our house anymore. And so I sat there and I was like, Cadence, what's wrong? She's like, I don't know. I just think I want to play. I'm like, all of this for to say that, but I think that whole, can you bring out that concept that you're talking about, like wishful thinking, like, oh, I should wish they were older. Oh, I just wish they'd understand. I wish they were like, and all of a sudden they're not in the house. Can you explain that, kind of what we talked about with that?
Well, I think people wish away a lot of their life. They wish away a lot of things. There was a movie out by Adam Sandler called Click.
Okay. Yeah, I've seen
I don't know how age appropriate it is. I remember, but
we're not going to say we're going to endorse that right now, but check with your parents if you're watching.
That's right. But the idea of the movie is exactly that. He gets a magical remote and he clicks through what he thought was adversity in life first. And then next thing you know, he was doing more clicks, and next thing you know, he zapped all through life. And so when we step back from that, we realize I got to be very careful of wishing life away. Because it happens very subtly, especially when kids are young. We're pulling our hair out, or at least what's left. You're like thinking to yourself, I can't wait till they're 4. I can't wait till, they
go to school or whatever.
They go to school, they can tie their shoes. I can't wait till I don't have to feed them anymore. All this stuff that we start realizing that it's part of the, I think the experience of life. We don't realize it, but we're wishing away. People wish things all the way till retirement. They'll say things like, man, I can't wait till I retire.
And then you're retired and you're like, I don't know what to do.
I don't know where to go from here.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
One thing that we also talked about, which I thought was just so the perspective you gave, I don't think I've heard other people talk about it, about parenting your kids that at first starts off authoritative and then there's a relationship at the end when they get out of the house and have their own kids, and it kind of like levels out at some point. Can you talk about that idea that you had with that, like that perspective? Because I think in this pandemic, it's easy to instantly just slip into one extreme or the other, where like you're so authoritative where your kid just hates you. Like honestly, like everything I do, you're mad at me or you're frustrated. Or there's one where you have so much relationship that like they actually have no structure to their day. They have no structure to their life because they don't understand like, oh, I just can't do whatever I want kind of a thing. So can you speak into that? Because that was super profound.
Well, it goes back to what we were saying with students in high school. How do you walk through this loss with them? Is that you're really walking it through, trying to engage it from their perspective of really what's going on with you. Because as parents, we remember it. Yeah. But what it's like for you. And that's a very relational exchange of trying to understand. And to me, this is the part of parenting that can get missed, particularly as they get older. And what does it mean to walk through life together? It's not walking through it perfectly.
Right.
It's not
and that's
perfection.
Key, I think. No perfection is involved.
It's how do we walk it through together and figure it out?
So good.
Because that's what's going to last as time goes on. Is how do we figure this out together? Now we try to keep it from as many issues from popping up as possible. But how do we walk through it together? It's a big deal. Because when they're young, I talk about the authority. When they're young, it's do, don't, yes, no. Right. Come, go. There's just that kind of directive. Yeah. It's just what you do. It's what has to happen. But as they get older, the relational side starts coming up. What is that relational side? It's the exchange of, what's going on, how's it going with you? And you start seeing that in middle school, more in high school. Right. And then they get older, the authoritative starts to go out of the picture because you got no control.
Yeah. Like when you're at when they're 30, you can't be telling them like, do this. Like, I don't have to listen to you at this point.
Yeah. It starts going it's like this. Now you're in this relational space. Yeah. Where it's hey, you know what? This might be the best way to think of that. Yeah, yeah. Really?
So with that, so with Holt or Costin, they've both are out of high school and college. As that relationship has grown, is it because you've kind of balanced that like they still let you speak into things? So I think the idea like with authority is like parents think I want to still speak into my kid's life. But I think they think that if relationship grows and I just have lost all equity, I can't speak in. But authority and I think speaking into someone's life are two different things. Like authority is like you follow what I say. Speaking is just what you just said. I can suggest, or maybe this is my perspective. How can we make sure we don't just get those out of balance? Like where we're all authoritative all the time, or we're so relational that the kids are just running like chickens with their heads cut off and they don't know what to do. How can we kind of figure out which one we lie in and how to kind of co-balance and co-parent together with people?
Well, the authoritative is a sense I have control. And when you're younger, you do have younger kids. As a parent, you do have control. Yeah. You got clear control.
So like with Kaden, she's 4.
Yeah, you got clear control. You got clear control what she wears, what she eats, where she goes, whether she has her seatbelt on or not. You got complete control over that. Yeah, yeah. Not using her cell phone while she's driving. You got complete control over that.
Right. Cadence, you better not be driving.
You got complete. Well, what happens as they get older, we start to realize my control is decreasing. And what parents will do is they'll try to hold on to that.
So they overcompensate with that?
For something they've got zero ability in.
Okay. Wow.
And so what happens is I don't have that control anymore. So what do? I have relational equity that I have with our children. We say, relate. Hey, here's the thing you may want to think about. Here's the thing that could be helpful to you. All right, that didn't work out. So what are we going to do different next time? What's the goal? What's the plan? And that ends up being that relational side of that. But I realize I don't. The control is.
Yeah. I think one of the things that like I heard growing up is like, you represent our family, like this big like mantra of like in the Worden house. And I almost felt like it crippled me to like even make any decision. Cause I'm like, oh my gosh, is this the right decision? Is this right? How do you empower, especially in the middle of a pandemic and especially in the middle of political crisis, things that are going on where there's a lot of arguing, and how do we encourage our students, our kids as parents to encourage to make a decision? And whether it's right or wrong, we'll figure it out together. What are some things that hinder parents from being able to say that? Like, I trust you to make a decision. And then, like you said, well, that didn't work out this time. So what are some things like for parents internally that we might need to deal with in stuff like that?
Shaming parenting is really hard, really rough. Actually, some cultures, you think of some of other cultures will say, "Don't bring shame on the family." They'll have this really strong.
Don't bring shame against our name.
That's right. It's real side of that, and it's really tough. It's really tough on that to work in that framework.
What does that do to someone when that like mentally, spiritually, and emotionally, like when it's like, don't bring shame on our family. Don't.
Oh, you felt it. You say, you felt it. So I was like,
you just don't. I didn't know what to do. Is that how most people kind of respond? Of like, I don't have the power to actually make a decision.
Yeah, it's basically don't embarrass us. Okay.
Well,
so,
don't do something stupid. Come on.
Right. Don't embarrass us. But that's really hard.
So how have you gotten past that though as a parent? Like, because I'm sure Holt, Costin, Laney, Grayson, Taylor, Silas, they've all probably at some point embarrassed you, where you're kind of like, what are you thinking? But how have you navigated that? Because I've never heard them once be like, yeah, my dad was so disappointed or upset at me, I just didn't know what to do. Like, how have you kind of navigated that?
Well, it's the idea are we expecting perfection?
Yeah.
There's some honor in, being, hey, we want to be a leader and we want to be straightforward and we want to do that stuff. But the reality is it's not about perfection.
Yeah.
Okay. That's what's huge. Because I think if we start realizing life is on a tightrope, we get real nervous.
Right.
But when we realize, and we see this with God, the grace gives us a really pretty big margin.
Yeah.
And so when we have that, where there's a lot more freedom in that, and so it's not about perfection.
Right.
That's the big one. And to say don't put shame on the family is a perfection thing.
Yeah.
Got to be just right.
So
got to be just right.
Yeah.
Social media will do that outside of parenting. You got to look just right. You got to have this. You got to have that. And so there's a lot of that pressure that goes on to doing life on a certain tightrope.
So it's almost like we're reinforcing, when we say it as parents, we're reinforcing the world's narrative for students already. Like for our kids, like, you've got to be perfect. You've got to look right. You've got to have this. And we might not try to be. We're trying to be like, I think the idea is like, we want you to be awesome. But what we're hearing is like, just don't screw it up kind of a thing. And so I think one of the biggest things that I'm seeing, like parenting. So how my mind works is I go from parenting to like the church community to the global church. And I think you've got a pretty powerful voice in our Vineyard movement. You've done a lot of podcasts with Phil Strout and some other people. And so as a church community, as a global movement or church, what do you kind of see God doing in the midst of all that's going on? Because I think you bring such a unique perspective of not only are you prophetic and a father and engaged with your local church, but like you are a psychologist. So you're also kind of like probably watching like how are things playing out. What do you see God doing in that kind of a realm?
Well, I think I see God working in desperation. And that's a big one. There's a lot of desperation.
Explain that.
There's just a lot of hurt. There's a lot of struggles. There's, I was hearing stories already today of things happening where people weren't able to get supplies and churches show up and help. There was time, or helping students on campuses that couldn't get to because of quarantine, and churches stepping up and doing a lot of giving and outreach and really being a place for help, help in that. I think there's been emotional desperation. Of what do I do? And churches trying to connect and outreach people and literally pack up the baptism tub and go to houses and say, we're going to do this here and right now. And so I think that's really cool. But I think a bigger part that we're realizing that I'm seeing is the need for human contact. I think even if Zoom came up with a hologram system,
that'd be kind of lit. I mean, they do that in Star Wars, so like, I'm assuming there's a possibility it could happen.
Sit around the table with all these holograms.
We just have Mike and Julie hopping right here, like, hey guys.
That's right. I don't know. I don't know if that still would satisfy the need for being in a relationship, or even the need for corporate church of coming together and having that and realizing the significance of that for folks. And people realize, man, that's a big deal. I'm hearing people being part of churches where the windows are way open and cold's blowing in and they're doing all this stuff just so that we can be together. So we can be together. And
I think the idea, so I love online stuff. Like I love creating content. I just enjoy it. But what I'm starting to notice is like, there can be online fatigue already. Like, I think we think more videos, more content, more this. And I love this podcast because it's conversations like this, I think, are beneficial. Mm-hmm. But I think the idea is like, yes, online is a community. Yes, and I agree it is. But God created us in community in person. And what you're talking about, that human touch, there's been such a gap that I've literally watched people not know how to talk to people. Like, they're like, hi.
Like shaking.
Yeah, they're like trying to dab up or hug. They're like, I don't know what to do, you know? And with that, like God created us to have human contact, have human interaction. In the middle of this, as church members, as believers, how can we kind of steward that? Or maybe like, what are some things that we can do so we don't lose that? Because I think, well, you can FaceTime people. It's still not in person.
No.
So what are some ways that we can get plugged in? Because I think it's huge.
It's really struggling. Even working with the addiction community, really struggling just having AA groups and the power of having these groups where people come together, celebrate recovery groups. You have these groups that just are like divorce care groups, or you have these groups that really were supporting each other. And what it means not to have that right now, or access to some of those things right now is really has really been tough. Let alone corporate church of just getting together and doing that, and the power of that. I think what happens, people realize what that is and the importance of it.
Yeah,
it's huge.
I think what I'm seeing is like a lot of people want to do either or, and in the Vineyard we always say it's both and. And I feel like that's where we're at with like online content and in-person interaction. Like I hear people like, the next future of the church is only online. I'm like, that goes against God's original design. So I don't know if that's true. But it helps. It reaches people when you can't be here. It reaches people who maybe can't drive here or need to stay home because of a health risk or something. But I think it's the both end of like, we actually need both to accomplish things.
Yeah, I think just, of course, from the psychology side of things, I'm probably more preference of the human than the technology. Right. Maybe that's not a Gen.
You know more about that than I ever would, though. So
maybe I'm just, I'm a Gen X guy, so maybe the millennials and Gen Zs are more those. But it's I just see it that way.
But what about the human interaction? What does that do for someone? Like, what does that do? Because I think. Parents, like people always say, it takes a village to raise your kid. Like I expect if Cadence is at your house and she's acting crazy, you'd be like, hey, Cadence, we cannot do that. Not be like, she'll be fine. I think what's happening is like, we don't have that human interaction. So what is that doing to us on a psychological level, on a mental strain? What is that actually doing to us as humans?
I think it's taken away a resource. That's a typical resource that we would rely on and didn't realize how helpful it was until it's taken away or stops.
It's like almost we took advantage of it.
Yeah, we didn't realize what was going on until I feel like missing something here. I'm feeling to connect. I talked to my kids about even just going to the youth programs, and they just love it. They love having this connection. Lainey and Grayson are doing a group with other students in schooling, and Lainey prefers that than being in the school. I mean, there's this, and it's all connection to what it is. Yeah. It's just total connection.
Wow.
It draws them in, even with adolescents. This in student ministry is they just give them a place to hang out, give them a place to do stuff together.
Well, and that's what's crazy. Like, so when we first started coming back in, we had people sign up to make sure we were following protocols, but like I had no agenda. I just asked students, what do you need? They're like, we just want to see humans. Yeah. And it broke that myth, I think, of like, they're only glued to their phones. Mm-hmm. They broke that stereotype of like, actually, we need human interaction, and that's what we're saying we need. Yeah. And I think it's just, as a church movement and stuff, like we do need to navigate. It's a tough situation that we're in, but not forsaking the in-person. Because what I'm finding is like, some people are like, well, I just don't want to meet in person. I'm like, I think being in person will actually solve the problem you're having. Mm-hmm. Like seeing other humans actually walking around and talking and being like, you're actually real, I think is huge. One of the last questions I want to ask you, Tom, is father to father, what are some things that you would encourage a young dad like myself, or even a young mother? Like, what are some things that we can start putting in practice now? So as our kids go, I'm about to have my third, Judah Dean, he's going to come out wearing a pair of Jordans or something, that's my dream. So like, what are some things that, you've got one, Costin just graduated, Holt's already been in college, but you've got Lainey and Grayson coming up. They're both juniors. Mm-hmm. What are some things that you can encourage parents of, little kids like me, or parents who have kids your age? Mm-hmm. What are some encouragement, like thoughts that you have towards that? Besides like buckle up, buttercup. I'm kidding.
Well, what I've noticed is the enemy loves to take God's blessings and make them burdens. So we got to be very careful.
Say that again, Tom. I seriously, I think that was that was profound what you just said.
He loves to take God's blessings and making burdens.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I noticed that with 6 kids. I remember saying, God, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Right.
It's chaotic.
That's right. And he said, Tom, they're blessings.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a total epiphany,
Wow.
And it's like this, does that make sense?
Yeah, right.
It's
Right.
like, but it's crafty
Yeah.
how that works. And so we go through life realizing, man, it's tough. And step back again, big picture perspective. What else would you rather be doing?
Yeah.
What else would you rather have? Look at this. Then people say, you're right. This is what I wanted. This is it.
Right.
I said, okay. And that big perspective now helps me get back in there. The other thing too is, working really as a team, even with the kids, without my wife Sherry involved in that at the level she is, she's way more relational with the kids and working within them than I am. And so 2 people together working on this is huge.
Yeah.
It's really huge, and having that is really significant. Be able to walk slide, be involved, and connecting at a relational level with the kids, particularly as they begin to get older.
For someone who might be a single parent, what's a way that they can? Because I think it is true, having both parents is critical. How can someone maybe who's a single parent, how can that shape to them or look like them? What's some thoughts that you have towards that?
Well, it's very similar in the sense of it's relationally driven.
Yeah,
you guys understand kids need help figuring life out.
Yeah.
Things just don't happen automatically.
Right.
Okay. So people say, what do you mean by that? Well, I didn't have to teach my kids not to share. They just came out that way.
Mine. Yeah.
Trust me, that would have been a lesson I would have left out.
Yeah,
I would have left that lesson.
All the lessons, I'm leaving this one out.
I'm leaving that one out. I'm leaving this not sharing, not listening.
This doesn't work.
That goes off the lesson plan.
Right.
But that's just how they come out.
Yeah.
That's what they're doing.
Yeah.
And so I think kids will automatically get it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know when life works that way.
Right.
Okay, that just automatically gets better.
Yeah.
They just don't. So we have to engage. We have to be a part of that.
Yeah.
We have to relate and have that relationship.
Yeah.
And it's not about perfection. So even the single parent with the adolescent who's getting in trouble, having a hard time, seems to be struggling.
Yeah.
We start to think to ourselves, boy, this is going to be tough. So it's how do we relate? How do we engage? How do we be a part of their lives? Because it's not about perfection. There's ups and downs all through life.
Right.
And it just is. I wish life was just straight this way, straight up. It doesn't work
so
that
much
way.
easier.
Yeah, it doesn't work that way. It's like this.
Right.
But so how do we just do that? How we walk through that together?
That's so good.
Good times, tough times. And so people say, well, I feel like I'm handicapped. Only one parent. No. It's just how do you relate? How do you connect?
Yeah.
Walk the journey. Because I have some stories of kids who grew up in single parent homes that just adore their parent.
Yeah.
Love him. Just thought they were the best.
Wow.
Had nothing to do with the ups and downs. They just knew they were there for them.
Yeah.
They knew they were willing to talk and willing to share with them. That's what they take away as adults.
Yeah.
That experience.
That's so good. Well, Tom, I just feel like you could just pray the Father's blessing over parents. So would you just look in this camera right behind me and just bless whoever's watching, and then we're going to play game 5 for 5, and then we'll end today's podcast.
Absolutely. Let me pray. Lord, I just pray for every parent listening, whether the children are at home or not, that you give them the favor of the Father's heart, Lord. Give them wisdom, give them insight, give them perspective, Lord. They know it's from you. They can see through your eyes what they need to do and how to do it in such a way that empowers, encourages, Lord, builds relationships, Lord, that exceed their expectation. Because you are the Father of relationship, Lord. You're a Father that loves and adores and that loves us on who we are, not on what we do. And Lord, I pray that over every parent watching this now. And we just bless in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Amen. So we're about to play game 5 for 5. I'm going to say 5 words. You tell me the first thing that comes to your mind. If we have to edit this out.
Freudian, free association.
Right? Okay. Here we go. First word is Sherry.
Strong.
Okay. Second word is family.
Comfort.
Third word is going to be the Vineyard. It's 2 words, but...
Vineyard. Vineyard for one. Home.
Home. Okay. Sports.
Bears.
And the last one I got to ask, because she's crazy, Lainey.
Oh, Sherry.
I love it, Tom. Thank you so much for joining us.
Man.
Hey, thank you guys for watching. If you have not subscribed to the YouTube channel, do that now. If you're listening on Spotify or iTunes, subscribe there. Share it with a friend if this blessed you. I know it blessed me. I'm going to go back and watch it because I need to be a better parent. So we love you guys. Thanks for joining us. Peace out.